Hello everyone, in this video I'll be showing you how to make a script where you can export as well as import masks for After Effects. So let's take a quick look at what this does. So if we run the script, what it's going to do is take the topmost layer that has masks, and what we can do is go ahead and export them, and it says export successful. And now if we want to, we can re-import these masks into a new comp. So it's going to save them in a predefined format that we make, where it has the mask number, all of the vertices, and the in and out tangents. And it's also compatible with as many masks as your layer has. And I can go ahead and import something like this asteroid mask I made. And you can see we have this nice mask here, and it matches up with the asteroid mask that I previously made around this object here. So we can then import it back into the program. And you can do this with as many layers or masks as you need. So let's go ahead and get started by making sure we have After Effects on one side and extendscript on the other, and we'll start a new JavaScript file. So we'll go ahead and start off by making some basic variables and setting up our UI. So we'll go ahead and set up our project, so it's app.project, and we're also going to reference our currently selected comp by making a variable called comp, which is our current active item. And now we're going to make some variables which will make more sense later on when we're parsing text and doing things like that. So I'll make a variable called current line, which is going to be the current line it's on when it's reading our document. I'm going to make something called a mask counter, and I'll set it equal to 0. This is going to be representative of how many masks are on our layer. I'll make a variable called layer mask, which will represent our layer mask itself. And I'm going to make a few arrays now. One of them is called all stuff, and it's just going to be a new array, and this is where we're going to compile everything when we import our text. We'll make one called export array. And this is going to be the final array where all of our stuff is pushed into and put into the text document. Make one called all vertices because we need to get vertices to put on our mask. We'll make one called all intangents because we need to get our curve values for the intangents, as well as all out tangents, so we can have accurate curves if necessary. And finally, I'm going to make two shapes, which are just objects. So I'll call one mask shape, and it's going to be equal to a new shape, and inside of a shape we can put in vertices, intangents, and out tangents. And I'll go ahead and make another shape called import shape, and we'll just make it a new shape. Alright, let's go ahead and set up our UI really quick. So we'll make a main window, and it's going to be equal to a new window, and we'll make it a palette. We'll call it mask importer and exporter, and undefined for the size values. I'm going to set up the orientation to be a column, and I'll go ahead and make a group. So I'll call it group 1, and that's going to be the main window, and we're adding a group with undefined size, and we'll just call it group 1. I'm going to set the orientation of this group to row, because as you saw in the UI example, it goes from left to right with our buttons. And now we just need to add our two buttons, so I'll call one import button, and it's equal to group 1, and we're adding a button, undefined values, and we'll call it import mask. And we'll also make an export button, pretty much the same thing, group 1, and we're adding a button, undefined size, and this will be to export our mask. And finally, to view our UI, we need to call the main window. First we'll center it, and then we'll show it. So we'll go ahead and run this, make sure it's in your version of After Effects, and make sure you have your comp selected, click on play. And now we have our UI set up. Now we just need to add all the functionality that is in this script. So there's going to be three main things we need done here. The first one is when we click on the import button. So import button.onClick is going to equal this function here. We also need a onClick for the export button. So we'll add that. And we're also going to have a function, which is going to be part of reading our document. So we're just going to set a function and call it read document. So to get started, let's do the easiest part first, which is our exporting. We'll start off inside of here by setting up our begin and end undo groups. So I'll just call this export mask. And we'll do an app.end undo group, so we can undo all of this stuff if we need to. So this script is going to assume that the topmost layer, or layer 1 in your composition that's selected, is the one with the masks. So we'll create a variable, just call it layer, and we'll set it equal to our composition, which is our active item, and layer 1. Now we need to get the number of masks that are in our layer. In this case, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And for example, if we have our massive asteroid here, it just has 1. So we'll make a variable called numMasks, the number of masks, of course. And this is going to be equal to our layer, the property called masks, and the number of properties within it. And that will give us how many masks are in it. And now we'll want to set up a for loop that goes through the number of masks we have. So we'll go ahead and type in for and create a basic for loop here. And we'll just set var I equal to 1. And for I is less than or equal to the number of masks, iterate I plus 1. And now we can go ahead and put some code in here. We'll start off by making a variable called myPath. And this is going to be equal to our layer, the property called masks. And within there, we're going to grab the property called mask with a space there. And we're going to add the I. And what this is going to do is if we have multiple masks, say for example in this one here we have mask 1, mask 2, mask 3, it's going to say mask, and it's going to grab the variable for I, so it could go through and say mask 1, mask 2, mask 3, etc. And we'll grab the property within that called mask path. And now we can go ahead and grab our vertices in and out tangents. So we'll create 3 variables, one called myVertices, one called myInTangents, and one called myOutTangents. And I'm just basically going to copy this code here minus the semicolon, paste it on all 3 of these, and at the end of each one of them I'm going to grab either my vertices or my tangents. So for the vertices I'll grab the value of the mask path and the vertices. For the intangents I'll grab the value and the intangents, and finally the value and the outtangents. And now that we've gotten our vertices, intangents, and outtangents and stored them in variables, we're going to put them in our mask shape that we defined up here. So I'm going to type in mask shape and the vertices, which have nothing in them currently. And we're just going to set these to myVertices. And for the mask shape intangents, I'm going to set it to myInTangents. And finally, for the mask shape outtangents, I'll just say myOutTangents. So what this is going to do is iterate through the number of masks that are on our layer. It's going to grab the vertices and all the curves and tangents and store them into this shape here that we defined up at the top. And the last thing we're going to do is push these all into a variable so that we can put that and store it into our text file. So I'll create a variable called mainString, and this is going to be a little bit complicated, but just bear with me. I'm going to pull up a previous example for reference for the formatting. So it starts off with mask and the iteration of the mask. So we have mask 1, mask 2, mask 3, and then it has an end line. And then we have vertices equals all of these numbers, end line, intangents equals all these numbers, end line, outtangents equals all these numbers, end line. And since we have a for loop going, it's going to automatically do this for every mask, but we need to set up our formatting now. So I'm going to set my main string equal to mask, and I'll leave a little space there. And then I'm going to add my iteration of I. And then we're going to add a line break. And that's the line break you want to use for Mac and Windows cross compatibility. And then I'm going to add some text that says vertices with an equal sign. And we'll add a space and end that string. And what we're going to do is add our mask shape.vertices. And just to be safe, we'll convert it to a string. And then we're going to add another end line, and this time we'll add our intangents equals our mask shape.intangents, and again we'll convert it to a string just to make sure we're safe there. And we'll add another end line. Go ahead and turn on word wrap here so I can see it. And now we'll go ahead and add our outtangents equals mask shape.outtangents and to a string, and we'll end it all off with one final line break. And finally, we're going to grab a variable we called export array up at the top, and we're going to push the main string. And this will go through and iterate all the times we need for the number of masks. So now all that's left to do is to get outside of our for loop here and actually write this to a file. So I'm going to grab my export array, and I'm going to set it equal to export array, and we're going to join it based on our line breaks. And then finally we can go ahead and set up our code to export this file. So I'm just going to create a variable called myFile, and I'll set it equal to a new file And for the location, I'll just set it to my desktop, and I'll just call it maskexample.txt. Then we're going to want to open this file up so we can start writing data to it. So I'll call my file, and I'll say .open, and we're going to want to write to it, so pass through the string w to write. Then, just to make sure compatibility is there, we're going to set the encoding to UTF-8. And then now we can actually write by going myfile.write, and inside of here we're going to put through our export array, and then we'll close our file. And finally, I'll just set up an alert to say export successful. And now let's go ahead and test this out. So I'll go ahead and have my asteroid on top here, and I'll run the script, and I'll export it. So our export was successful. If I load up my mask example, you can see we have mask 1, all of our vertices, our in tangents, and all of our out tangents. So this looks like a lot of data, but once we set up our import function, the computer can go through this extremely quickly and generate our mask. So I'll go ahead and minimize my export button here now that we know it works, and we'll set up our import button on click function. We'll start off with an app.begin undo group, and we'll just call this import mask. We'll do our end undo group. First off, we'll start by making a variable called import file. This is going to be equal to a new file. An import file is going to be equal to import file.openDialog, which will load up a Windows or Finder folder for us. And the arguments we're going to pass in here are the text it says. So choose masked text file. And we can also put in the file type. So I'll just put in text file, and there's some special characters you want to put in here, .txt. And then we'll make a variable called fpath, which is just going to be our path of our file. And this is going to be equal to import file.absolute URI. And this is not really something we're going to be using, but if you need the file path in the future, you can use this variable to get it. And finally, we're going to call our function readDocument, which we've yet to set up, and the variable we're going to pass through is our import file. And down here under readDocument, we'll just change the name to, say, input.doc. So since the last step was to go to the readDocument function, let's go ahead and set it up. So we'll create a variable called thisDoc, which will just be this document that we're on, and this is going to be equal to a new file, and we're going to be referencing input.doc. And then we're going to say if this doc exists, in other words, is there a document loaded, then we're going to execute some code. And this first line of code will be this doc.open. So we're going to open up the file, and we're going to read it with an R instead of a W for write. And then we're going to go ahead and put in a while loop. So while it's not the end of this document, or EOF stands for end of file, so while it's not at the end of the file, basically the last line, we're going to want to set current line, which we defined up here. We'll set current line to this doc.readLine, because this is going to go through line by line, so we'll set the current line to the current line it's reading. And we're going to want to grab all stuff, which is going to be our big array, and we're going to push current line. And then after we've gone through this while loop, we'll go ahead and close the document by saying this doc.close. And now I'll go ahead and make some space inside of our function here. We're going to set up a few variables to parse our text out. First, we'll make one called thisLine. We'll make another one called equals character index. And we'll make a third called tempLine. So this line is going to reference the current line it's reading. The equals char index is going to reference the index of this equal sign here, so that we can easily grab all of the numbers after it. And tempLine is going to be the value of just the numbers. So we'll go ahead and set up a for loop. We'll just set var I equal to 0, and while I is less than all stuff dot length, we'll increment up by 1, and we'll go ahead and set up our brackets here. First thing we'll do is set this line, the variable we just created. We'll set that to all stuff and I. So the index I, it's going to go through line by line. The first index is going to be mask 1. The second one is going to be vertices equals all these numbers. The third one is going to be our in tangents, and fourth being our out tangents. So it's going to go through line by line here. And now we'll set up some stuff where it checks what the text is actually saying. So the code we're going to be using is if this line, so the current line it's on, dot match, and we'll go ahead and just set up that function there. So the code we want to use inside of here, we'll start off with a / and the word we want to search for. So the first one we want to search for is going to be mask. We want to find mask. So / mask and / to end that. And we'll put in a G to globally search for it. It'll search through the whole string. So if in this current line it finds the word mask, what do we want to do? All we're going to do in this case is set our mask counter and we'll increment it up 1. This way we can use this in a for loop later when we're importing things, and we can easily get all of the masks imported. On the next one, we're going to be searching for vertices. So I'll type in vertices and I'll do a space and equal sign because we have that right there. And again, make sure it's global. And this time we're going to say our equals char index, our equals character index, is equal to this line and the index of, and we're just going to put in our equal sign in a string. Then we'll say our temporary line is equal to this line dot slice, and we're going to want to slice between two values. The first one is our equals character index, so right here, +1, so we can get the value after it, and the ending length is going to be the length of the line, so this line dot length. So it's going to grab everything from after this character here to the end of the line, basically getting us all of our values. And finally, I'll grab all of my vertices and I'm going to push in our temporary line. So that way we can start storing all of our vertices in an array. And I'm just going to copy this 2 more times, one for our in tangents and one for our out. So type in tangents and out tangents. And instead of all vertices, I'm going to say all in tangents. And here instead of all vertices, I'm going to say all out tangents. So that is our read document function. Just to recap, it's going to import our document that we selected. If it exists, it's going to open it up for reading. It's going to go line by line until it reaches the end of the document. It's going to set our current line equal to the current line of our document and push our current line into an array called all stuff, which is going to contain all of the information in our document organized on a line break basis. Then we'll close our document, and then we're going to run through the length of our all stuff array and start parsing out what is a mask, what's a vertice, and what are in and out tangents. So now there's a final little thing of parsing we need to do in our import button itself. So we've gone through and read our document and basically stored all of our values from our text file. Now we just need to get them into a composition, a layer, and make them masks. So now we're going to want to go ahead and go below our read document. The next part gets a little bit messy. I probably could have optimized the code a little bit, but we'll just go with it. So we're going to go ahead and create a new composition. Just call it new comp. And we're going to set this equal to our project, items, and we're going to add a comp. For the first argument, we're going to go ahead and name it. I'll just call it imported mask. We have our width, so I'll do 920, height 1080, pixel aspect ratio 1, duration 10, and frame rate 30. And then we're going to go ahead and open our comp in our viewer, which will just make it the active item. And this feature is only available in CS6 and above. Now we're going to create a bunch of variables. Again, this isn't very optimized, but it's going to get the job done for now. So basically we have vparse, varray, iparse, iarray, oparse, and oarray, which stand for vertice parse, vertice array, intangents parse, intangents array, outtangents parse, and outtangents array. And we also have all of our vertices, all of our intangents, and all of our outtangents being an array. This will all make sense in just a second. We need to go ahead and create a solid where we're going to apply this mask to. You could of course import a layer and apply it to that, but a solid will be easy. So I'll just make a variable called import layer. I'm going to be setting it to our new composition. Inside of its layers, we're going to add a solid. The first argument is the color. We'll go ahead and just make it a pure white. Then we'll name it, we'll call it mask layer. Then we need its width, its height, pixel aspect ratio, and duration. Now there's some last minute parsing we need to do because our current array of vertices, intangents, and outtangents is a one-dimensional array. But if we want to apply it to an actual shape, we need a two-dimensional array with the first value being an x and a y, the next index being an x and a y, etc. So we'll create a for loop, And this is where our mask counter is going to come in handy. We'll just set a variable e equal to 0. And for e is less than our mask counter, increment e plus 1. So the first thing we're going to do is set vparse to all of our vertices, and we'll set it equal to its e index. And we're going to convert that to a string. And for our varray, we're going to set that equal to our vparse, and we're going to split it. And inside of here, we put in what we're going to split it by. And since they're separated by commas, inside of some parentheses, we're just going to put a comma. So this is going to go through as many times as we have masks. It's going to set vparse equal to the first set of vertices here. And then it's going to split it based on these commas. And now we'll go ahead and do a while loop. And we're going to say while varray.length is greater than 0, we're going to set all v's. And we're going to push varray, and we're going to splice it from 0 to 3. And what this is basically doing is it's going to convert our one-dimensional array that we just set up, our varray, which has all of our first vertice values, and it's going to grab the first two values, put them into one index, grab the second two, put them into one index, etc. Basically converting the one-dimensional array into a two-dimensional array. And I'll just change this to 2 so we go from 0 to 2. So now we just need to do this same thing for our intangents and outtangents. So I'll go ahead and copy and paste it twice. And I'll just set this to iparse, iarray. Instead of all vertices, we want all intangents. Set this to iparse, while iarray.length is greater than 0. We're going to want to push this into all i's, all intangents. And I'll go ahead and change the outtangents as well. Alright, so now we have our for loop, which is going to convert all of our values and basically make them ready to set as our shape values. So after all these while loops, still within our for loop, we're going to set our import shape.vertices equal to all v's, which is all of our vertices. We'll set our import shape.intangents equal to all i's. And we'll set our import shape.outtangents equal to all o's. We have all our vertices and stuff set up now. We just need to apply them to masks for our import layer. So don't forget we made a variable called layer mask up here. We're going to be using that now. So we'll call layer mask, and we'll set it equal to our import layer.masks.add property called mask. So this is going to add a mask every time it iterates through this. And now all we have to do is set up our vertices and stuff equal to that. So we'll call our layer mask and the property called Adobe Mask Shape, which references our vertices and stuff. And we'll set its value to import shape. And finally, to end things off here, we'll go ahead and alert import successful. So a brief overview again of what this is doing. It's going through for the number of masks we have here in a for loop. It's parsing through some of the information, and it's converting a one-dimensional array into a two-dimensional array, which is what is required for vertices and different tangents. Then we're setting up our shape vertices by just setting them equal to the values we've parsed. And then we're going to create the number of masks that is in our mask counter, and we'll set our mask shape equal to our vertices and tangents. So now that all of that's done, let's go ahead and test it out. Looks like we forgot some parentheses here. Now let's try it. Alright, so we're going to import a mask, and I'll just choose the asteroid, import successful, and look at that. We have our mask. Of course, there are some positions that are off. The anchor point is in a different place than it should be, but you can go ahead and set those up yourself, and go ahead and mask anything. If you come across any problems like this, where you import a shape and all the masks kind of got messed up, all you have to do is make sure that your masks are closed. In the After Effects CS6 scripting guide on page 172, you have your shape object and it will tell you all about that. And down here it says myShape.closed equals true. You want to make sure it's set to true, otherwise you just have open masks and that will cause a lot of weird problems. But that is it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed. The links for the code will be in the description, but that is how you export and import mask shapes for After Effects. Make sure you subscribe to my channel, like the video, and share. And of course, don't forget to leave your comment if you have any questions about code, but we'll see you next time.